Herzlich willkommen zur Niyama Show. Heute habe ich einen ganz besonderen Gast bei mir, Atlas aus Polen. Er lebte viele Jahre in Irland und wir werden uns auf Englisch unterhalten. Deswegen werde ich jetzt gleich auch mit Englisch weitermachen. So, welcome to the Niyama Show. Today my guest is Atlas next to me. Atlas lived a long time in Ireland. And today we're talking about a really hot topic. We're talking about men's mental health. I can't wait to chat with you to talk about our topics. I would say, let's start. So, Atlas, who are you and what are you doing?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you. And the topic is very close to me and my life, so I'd love to chat about that. So who am I and what am I about? First of all, I'm 37 and I lived 14 years in Ireland, so that's why it's the biggest chunk of my adult life is there. And I also changed my name, so my original name was not Atlas, it was Marcin, and I was born in Poland. And I left that country when I was 17.
Can I ask you, why did you change your name?
Many reasons, but the biggest two were, first one, I knew I'm not going to come back to Poland, even for retiring. Secondly, I realized that every country that I was going to, people were like butchering my name.
Wow.
They were like, Marcin, because the spelling is different than what you say. So then in Ireland, in Italy, it was always sounding different. And then I settled on Martin, which was, again, like, oh, Martin or something else. And my surname was a little bit weird as well. So I wanted to change my name earlier on, but then I never had courage to do so. And back when I moved to Portugal in recent years, the girl I was seeing, she was like, yeah, we should change our names. And in between cacao ceremonies that we used to do a lot of, then we were like, okay, let's ask what our names are. And between, I think, 5 and 6, which would have been November 2021, at that time, I was asking, and my intention was, what's my name? And name Atlas was already kind of in my vicinity in a way. And I love Greek mythology and all of that. So it was between Atlas and Atticus. And then within the week, it transpired that there was very strong attachment to Atlas. And I'll tell you why. Because Atlas, according to mythology, he's wielding the heavens on earth on his back. And back in the day when I was younger, I felt so much pressure in my life as a man that I felt like I was holding the world or a heaven, not only for myself, but for all the people around me. And that was the beginning of me understanding that I was having a lot of behaviors in my mental health that were pressured through society.
Oh, wow. That's the topic we want to talk about. This is insane.
Yeah.
So how was your journey so far in mental health? So you started with the feeling that you have this pressure early in your early age.
My whole life, I was very competitive. So I always were competing in something. And it was mostly sports, and it was singular sports. It was not team sports. But to bring you back the original, I was born in Poland, grew up in the countryside outside Krakow, and then went to boarding school in Krakow. And that was a big break for me because at 15, I understood that I didn't fit really well in my family in a way.
Why?
Because I was thinking differently already. I felt like I wanted to escape the countryside and I wanted to live in a bigger city. But also I felt like I was not really fitting in my family per se. I'm their, like their son and everything. However, even then when I was younger, a lot of people who met me and then at some stage later met my family, they were like, it seems that your way of thinking is completely different than your family. We know by your features you look exactly like your father. However, it seems that you're adopted. And then that was the internal feeling for me as well. So I didn't really fit in. And later on in my life, through doing work and therapy and everything, I understood why. And it was based on my upbringing. The way I was brought up was mainly by my mom and her mom. My dad wasn't around a lot because he was always busy with his entrepreneurial things and business, and emotionally he wasn't there as well. So I was brought up in a very feminine way, in a way, which meant also I lacked a lot of masculine traits, and because I'd never had like a male figure in my life.
Did you discover that in your therapy, or?
I was realizing a lot of traits that were like holding me back in my younger years as well, but I didn't know where it was coming from. And also, when you're like 18 and it's super easy for you as a guy to make women safe around you and talk to them very easy, because I had that strong feminine side and they were like kind of like drawn to me in a way, but in a different way, not in like a polarity, masculine, feminine. I was safe guy, like they could talk to me about everything. And what it meant for me was like, wow, I'm handsome, right? But I wasn't, I was still okay, good looking. However, the draw was from a different perspective. Women who felt safe and they were like, oh, let's hang out with him because we know he's not going to do any crazy things and all of that. So, at 17 or 18, that time I was choosing that because it's like, oh, surrounded by women. That's what every guy at my age wants, right?
Yeah.
However, later on in my life, I discovered that I had behaviors that were stemming from that upbringing that were becoming problematic for my relationships, for the way I was looking and I was seeing other people's behavior and my behavior specifically. And I would say there's this term coined by Dr. Gerber, I think. Gerald Glover. And he wrote this book, it's called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And when I read that book, it was like a hot and cold shower just went over my body. I was like, what the hell is happening? Because he literally, I felt like I was being watched because he wrote everything and that was my life.
Oh, wow.
It was the closest book ever I've read and on behaviors and the male perspective on behaviors. That fits so well, like a glove. Like there was nothing off. And I was afraid at the beginning. I was like, wow, I have a lot of things to do and work on.
Wow, a short break.
Yeah.
All of the books or studies we are talking about, I would link them in the show notes so everyone can look if they want to have a look inside of it.
If I was to ever recommend any book to any man that is feeling that maybe he has like slightly people-pleasing behaviors or a nice guy mentality where too nice, not being just a good man, just being nice and having these like covered contracts, which is the main thing for nice guys, is like, I'm nice because I want something from you, but you don't know what I want.
I have a friend, he plops up in my head. When we were younger and we were at school, and we started partying and we drove our cars, and he was always the car guy. And he was always driving all these women to the club. They were clubbing together, dancing together, but he was always the nice guy. At some point, I felt sorry for him because he was a really good person, but he was always in the friend zone because he was a nice guy. And when you talk about this topic, I think that's exactly what he needed back these days. A little bit more of the traditional masculinity, a little bit more, no more nice guy, like you said. And this brings me to my question. How has the society perception of man mental health evolved in modern times? I think there was a switch. I'm 1985, like I said, so 37 years. And in my time, obviously my journey is very specific. I moved countries and I went through this very long journey of healing my
my masculine and being a good man rather than a nice guy. And that doesn't happen over time as well. So I've been in this, you could say, the manosphere and around psychology and masculinity for a while.
Yeah.
And I see this happen. There was a big shift a few years ago, for good actually, let's say, speaking about Ireland for the most part. Back in 2005 when I went there, nobody spoke about mental health where it comes to men. And it was a stigma. And still is at many levels. However, what has started to happen was just the statistics that were there started to be more prevalent. And I think in so many ways, COVID and the pandemic I've even more highlighted that issue where obviously we all suffered over the last few years.
Yes.
However, the pinpoints or the hot spots that were there became more prominent. And one of the big things was mental health for men specifically, because at that time, imagine if you're a man and you're providing for your family, all of a sudden you have no means of providing for your family because let's say your business is failing because of pandemic, and this extra pressure that happened in pandemic, and not only in Ireland, in many countries, right? I'm not talking about only, but my experience from there. I've seen a big shift of men that were in the prominent places. For example, rugby players in Ireland. It's rugby, just for everyone's information, this is religion. In Ireland, there's this book, side note, there's this book, I think, Ireland for Dummies, like the series of books. And I read it when I was 20 something, when I moved there. And there was this chapter, and it said religion. And it said, look, rugby. Because it really is.
I mean, it's kind of soccer in Germany-ish.
Yes.
Well, more.
Yes. I think every country has a different sport. In Ireland, it's rugby and GAA, which is like a few different sports. But what has happened, which is beautiful, a lot of these prominent men with a big following and having this big masculine kind of avatars as rugby players, started speaking out, and it's like, I'm struggling right now. There's, a lot of stuff happening in my life. And it was great. They were talking about it on the kind of lower levels and a little bit less before, but I think a big shift for that was in Ireland, where a lot of retired as well rugby players started to talk more and more.
That's good.
And to young men. It's not necessarily to everyone, but it was specifically to young men, and telling them, this is okay.
You said in the early 2000s. Would you say that the internet helped a lot to create more awareness in mental health?
Yes, definitely. The spread of social media, Facebook, Instagram, it helped. It gave platform, right? It just gave a voice.
I mean, that's a good thing in the internet, but we will come back to the social media later in our conversation. It's great. In my opinion, it is great. And also, it is really good for the men that they see other men who are struggling with mental health, so that they get the feeling it is okay to have struggles.
Yes, and I'm not alone. Yeah. A big thing for me was, and again, this is my personal journey. I was quite early in my life as a man, because of my issues, interested in therapy, psychology, and all these things. And what has happened, obviously I didn't dive in straight away into full-on therapy, but the more I knew about it, I was less afraid of it. And
you opened up.
I opened up, and I didn't feel that there was a stigma around the people I met, I knew at the time. But in general, like in work that I worked at the time, I wasn't advertising, yes, I'm going to therapy. But I started going to therapy for these issues that I've seen. I was married at the time. And what has happened was it opened more for me. And then I realized I needed a mentor. I needed more men in my life. And then very consciously, I decided to only hang out with men. So obviously I was married, so I was loyal to my wife However, I had friendships in work or outside works that were female as well. And I decided very consciously to cut them, not off, but like limit the interactions and only hang out with men, because I needed that masculine energy around me. And that was a big point for me. And obviously my mentor it was amazing. So that helped a lot.
When we are talking about mental health issues, what would you say? What are some of the most issues experienced by men?
Definitely anxiety around being able to provide is one of the biggest things. And I'm bringing that up because I've been part of men's groups and men's circles, and I've facilitated some of mine as well over the years. And it's one of the most common threads that comes up within maybe 2-3 meetings when we get acquainted. This is one of the main things, is where as men, we want to provide. We want to be the one who is paying the house, the bills and everything, because in our nature, that's how we were even when, hundreds of years ago, we were the hunters and we were providing a lot of that. And it translates in our genes to now. However...
And also the role of the woman was to surrender to their man.
Exactly.
To feel the safety around them.
Yes. Yeah. So by providing and by being the man of the house or the head of the house, we were obviously in our masculine, and then a woman could feel feminine because she was safe, she was provided for, and then she could care for the family. She would be able to be much more loving, caring, and then be like a beautiful addition to the whole family life, right? And creating that family life where men, we would be busy, making sure that there is enough resources, right? Yeah. But coming back to that, and that's one of the big pressures that men feel is like, I need to provide. And obviously that base needs to be achieved, right? Yeah. And some men struggle with that because, for example, if you grew up in a household, I'm giving an example of mine, where it was my mom was the steady bread earner. My dad had always like entrepreneurial accolade, but it never really anything happened with it. He was making some money, but very unstable, which meant there was a lot of tension in the family house because of that, which meant for me that I've seen a very skewed version of how the household worked. Also many fights and aggression because of, I don't remember any other fights that my parents had except because of money. And that also...
I think that's a big thing in a lot of relationships and marriages.
And what it created was, it created this tension that it translated to me as a young boy, as a young man as well. And also the like a role model that I had from my upbringing was that the wealthy and abundant people were not necessarily good people. That was the view of my parents, and I saw that soaked in through me. And it took me years to realize that it was limiting my way of making money in the future.
You're making a good point, but I think also in Germany, a lot of people have this idea of rich people or successful people. And that's a whole other topic, but just to maybe get a glimpse of it, it's like, it is okay to be successful, and it is okay to make money because you deserve it when you are building something.
Of course.
But that's a whole different understanding of what the average people have. So also in our hometown, or when we talk with our friends, a lot of them, when they see someone successful, they're like, I don't know if they're, they don't really like that they are successful. There's the English word for it.
It's like envy or jealousy.
Jealousy, thank you. They're jealous because Yeah, I mean, there are different reasons why they are jealous, but it's not a positive feeling they combine with successful people. So it's hard to go over that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big hump to go over, and it took me years to realize, a few sessions of hypnotherapy and few other things to realize that I was limiting myself. And I also believe, and this story is not to say this is my parents' fault. You know, they had their experiences and they did the best they could, right? Yeah. However, what I like to say to everyone where it comes to healing or therapy or any of situations where we become aware of a shortcoming that we might have or a specific programming that we are reliving because of our upbringing. I like to say the moment we become aware that it's in our cycles or how we live our life, we become responsible for it. So we know where it came from, but the moment I was aware of it, it was my only responsibility. It's not my parents' responsibility to fix it.
Yeah.
I can tell them, hi guys, I think this is where it came from, and you can deal with it on your own. But it's my responsibility then as a person, as a man, to heal it for myself, because otherwise I'll be spilling it over people that I meet, you know, friends, family, and then limiting myself as well. So I always say, and I say it again, the moment you realize that you have something to heal, this is your full responsibility. You cannot blame someone else because you're already aware. It's on you then.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
Yeah. Coming back to the main core of the question, you said how I think that it changed. Obviously, the social media and Instagram and so many voices right now and so many opinions on mental health. And obviously, I think once the level of awareness of overall mental health rises, the mental health of men or mental health of different minorities rises with it, right? So I think overall, there is a much bigger understanding of how mental health affects our daily life. Definitely in the last 10 years, in the last decade, huge amount. I remember when I was in the corporate world and 10 years ago, we would have performance reviews and all of this. Nobody was asking you how you feel or like, are you feeling sad on Monday when you're coming to work or anything? There was nothing like that.
I think these days there are two big sides of the social media world. One side tells you take care of your mental health and creates this awareness, so you open up for mental health. Yeah. But the other side totally disturbs your mental health, like the expectations of the society for men. I think, in my opinion, there was this decade or these days, modern times, men have a hard life. It's hard for men to do it right, you know. On one side, the women, or you read, they want to have a man, they want to have a person who cares for them, protects them, brings the money maybe home. But on the other side, they want to be as same level as the man. So the women are like, we are equal, we can take care of ourselves, and the role of the man totally shifts. So they are confused. And I think this confusing state of mental health, so on the one side, you should take care of your mental health, but on the other side, you don't know what to do. So what is right for men? I think this is really hard.
I think what I'm understanding from what you're saying is there's a lot of confusion, right?
Yes.
And obviously that confusion can come from so many voices that were raising concerns about women's mental health, and obviously that in turn involves men, right?
Yes.
There's many ways to approach this, right? And there's many things that you've touched on. Obviously, women, the social dynamics and the models that are changed right now, and the kind of the less traditional way of women being women right now, and them wanting to have a man who will provide, who would do all these things. He will be over 6 foot. He'll have 600,000 or 6 figures jobs and all of that. Like, I think there's a saying 3 6s or something like that. But then on the other side, they will be like, and I'm just gonna provide nothing. I'm just gonna be pretty. There is merit to it, right? When we come back to like the old traditional values and models and role models of masculinity and femininity, we would arrive at this very similar way that it is now. However, it is there's completely different expectations, right? And for men, again, like I said, we want to provide. We want to be in a position to provide. We accept the reality of the world. We want women to be more feminine, which means we have to make them safer, safe in our environment, provided for. So this beautiful balance of, I love to bring an infinite sign to it. And we spoke about this yesterday.
Yes.
And I think it's a great analogy to, as a man, when you're masculine and you meet a woman and she's safe around you, she becomes more feminine. And because she's more feminine, she treats you in that way, then you in turn become even more masculine as a man, because I have this beautiful woman by my side and I feel more masculine.
Yeah.
And then in turn, she becomes even more feminine. And there's this beautiful flow of energy all the time. It's almost like, I mean, I feel it's infinite.
I really like this picture. And this, when we are talking about this, only this gives me a really warm feeling.
Yes.
It feels really nice to have this dynamic, to have these two sides. And
exactly.
Of course, it can work the other side around.
It's free-flowing, right?
Women can be more masculine and a man can be more feminine, and then it's like the same energy.
It's polarity, right?
Yes.
So it is polarizing. However, what I'm referring to is still having that difference, like a masculine man and a feminine woman.
Yes.
The polarity is, that's what it's like the fuel of it, right? It can work in reality as well, where a woman is more masculine and a man is more feminine. However, in my opinion, I think it still works. It can work for many years, right? However, at some point, and this I believe is down to our psychology and biology for women and men, it's there is a loss of respect, and a lot of times when a woman becomes a provider and a man is, let's say, caregiver to her children, okay? Because I've seen this happen, and I've seen marriages thrive for many years, but then in reality, that's a very small percentage of relationships. And what it's gonna happen or may happen is that woman is going to go out to the world and she's gonna see different profiles of marriages with the reverse situation. And it triggers something that she would like to be cared for, rather than she would be the masculine energy and the masculine provider per se in the dynamic that she's already in. And I think over time that can create resentment and lack of respect or losing respect. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Anymore,
as long as it works for the people involved, great for them, right? However, I feel there's a bigger chance of that switching, and when there is two similar energies where like it's slightly masculine and then slightly masculine, unfortunately it's not going to work for long term.
I mean, I can only speak for myself. What I experience in my relationship right now is when I was younger or as children, I grew up with my mom alone. So now I think I understand that I took the role of the male part in this relationship. If this is healthy or unhealthy, that's another point. But I feel this masculine energy inside of me long time ago. So, and now with my partner, I feel that I open up to feminine energy, and I feel and understand that I need that.
Yes,
and I enjoy it. Yes. I enjoy being a woman, and I enjoy to show it more to the world. And from over the last years in this relationship, it grew.
I can see in your eyes right now and your face that it's just changed when you're speaking about it, because it's your innate nature that's coming up and flourishing. And over the years, it wasn't that way.
I used to take care of everything, of my mom, of our home, of I was an equal part in this relationship. We decided everything together. If there is a move to another flat or when we buy a new car or so, I was in this relationship equal, not in the daughter role.
Yes.
So I used to take care afterwards. In the university, I was like, I think I acted like a man. In this
it can happen.
Yes. And now in this relationship, I blew up.
Why do you think it's that way? Like how do you feel? What enabled you to be more feminine in this current relationship?
I think Chris does a really good role in it. He supports me into this stuff. So he says, you can get your nails done. It's okay, do that. Be more woman.
So
I like that.
He's encouraging it.
Yes, and also he likes to go shopping with me. When we go shopping together, I never experienced that in my past relationship. So we are in a shop together, and I feel that he likes that I like to have a nice dress or so. I feel this.
Yes.
He really wants that, and he really wants for me to feel good and to feel pretty, to feel as a woman. And this is what I feel more and more and more after the last year, months. And that's a really nice way. I don't know, it was maybe 10 years ago, I felt stupid about when I had the idea getting my nails done.
Because it felt that it wasn't right?
Right.
Because at the time, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Like girly-ish, too girly-ish.
It's too girly because you were used to, looking after your mom, from what you said, and being the caregiver almost, but in a kind of more masculine way, because you had to look after so many things, right?
Yes.
And that creates a very long set of patterns that you would live for sometimes forever, right?
Yes.
And thanks to Chris, what you're saying right now, he's showing you and encouraging you to be more feminine, more free, more you.
Yeah. Sometimes these are a tiny sentence like, I like the dress you're wearing. You should wear more often dresses.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And that's what men should do as well, encourage our women to be more feminine.
And I totally believe and understand that when a man sees that their partner opens up to feminism, that he gets more masculine.
I feel we have a beautiful pride from that as men, when we can provide and create this beautiful dynamic between ourselves and a woman in a way that we see. And we use this word a lot, like flourish, because it is like a beautiful blooming flower, and you uncover then the core of the feminine.
That's true. But what would you say when you are a man and discovering some issues in your mental health? Is there a stigma around men seeking therapy?
Yes.
Why?
Because there used to be for ages and very long time, and I'm generalizing right now, this view of, man, we're always strong, we're the hunters, we can never speak about our issues, or we always need to be super strong, so that means we never show weakness. And if you show weakness, back in the day, let's say hunter-gatherers, when it was so long time ago, you would not be the prime, right? There was always now it's called the alpha. If you show weakness, you're not alpha anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of merit into it. However, when I encourage men to be vulnerable in a way, it's not me saying you should break down and cry in front of a live Instagram feed. This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying is to allow the emotions that are in you and are flowing through you on a daily or a weekly basis, in regards to your daily life or your business or anything that's happening with your family and the struggles you're going through, allow them to go through. Don't put them down and then allow them to fester, because at some stage it's going to blow up.
Yeah.
And there's this term right now we like to use a lot, especially in the corporate world, the burnout, right? And the burnout is...
Is this a sign of mental health issues when you...
Yes.
I mean, when you are in the burnout, you are burned out, so you overcome things maybe you should take care of earlier?
Yes. And so I believe burnout, when it comes to like a full-on burnout, what it is it's a nicer way of saying you're depressed.
Naturally.
It's just it's a corporate way of saying, oh, you burned out, so you're depressed. And that shows you how stigma works, because people don't want to say, oh, you're depressed. Even that is too much. And
even in this, in modern times, I was a primary school teacher, and a lot of teachers are burned out or close to the burnout. And
yes.
I saw a lot of colleagues in the burnout. I saw the explosion. One morning, there was a colleague coming in, and she was like imagine a primary school teacher with full of their heart for the children. She was that. She was so taking care of the kids. And then this morning she came into our room. She started crying, or she already cried, and she said, I can't stop crying. But she was in the school ready to teach in the morning, 7:30. She could not stop crying.
And everything was bubbling up for her, exploding.
And then she was gone for 3-4 months or so, and came back after. But what I would say is that when you talk about these issues with other people, non-teachers, because as teacher, you know this happens, you see it. But when you talk with other persons about that, they're laughing at you. They're like, what, burnout? Oh, come on. There's no issue. It's like, it's a made-up thing of society.
Oh, it's a very real thing. And I think, and I could assume, maybe because teachers bring so much to the job, they bring so much of themselves to want to teach younger kids, and there's so much involved in being a teacher. It's not only I'm a math teacher.
Also the pressure
you're molding young people, and it's like you could say like life coaching, right? There's so many ways that these kids come up to you and they look up to you as well as a teacher, because they sometimes don't even have these role models in their home, right? So they have this persona of a teacher, and I remember there's a lot of people who sometimes they're successful in life and they bring back their teachers in their life that they changed their life, right?
Yes.
So I think there are certain occupations that are more prone to burnout and being depressed, because they, like Wall Street, teacher, as we spoke, very high stressful situations, like EMTs or doctors. These are people who are even nurses, right? They're prone to being overworked, and then in very emotionally stressful situations.
What would you say are the first signs that you, as man, should take care of your mental health, or maybe should think about your life or your work or relationship? What would you say are the first things?
The first one, and I would say the first one that comes to my mind is overusing something. So overconsumption of alcohol. This is very prevalent. For me, it was slightly different because I went to boarding school, which meant I drank all the vodka in the world in very early stages of my life.
Okay.
And then I'd never had a need to party a lot. After that, I feel like I've drank all of it, and then until I'm 90. So, but I've seen it with my friends and I could say it with sober eyes because I was most of the time sober.
Okay.
The last time I was drunk was probably 2013.
Okay.
Which meant and I don't abstain from partying, but I would be sober, which meant I had very, very good view of everyone else, and I like to observe and see and draw conclusions. So the first thing I would say is men would try to bury the feelings that they're experiencing, because a lot of times they're foreign. Like a man who is like grew up in the countryside in Ireland, and then he goes to Dublin and a big city, and then he's clashing with all this stressful and work environment, everything, women, social anxiety, all these things at once, right? It's not like it's coming one by one. There's no cue, everything at once. And it becomes a point where he wants a break, and that break usually involves drinking.
Like excuse, or like...
I would say it's more numbing. It's just numbing the feelings. And it's much easier to stuff them down when you're drinking, because your brain is not really able to focus on it anymore. So I would say the first sign is, as a man, if you feel that you're overdosing something, I'm giving an example of alcohol because like Ireland is a country where everybody drinks almost all the time. And you can see quite quickly if you're having, I don't know, a few beers in a week, and then all of a sudden some things happen in your life and then you're doubling that amount. That's a first sign of like, oh, you're escaping something.
I think it's like, you can also say some sport activities. So if a person runs into the gym every day, and he kind of, or if you have this classical relationship and they have disagreements, how often happens that the man runs into the gym and trains for hours, and next day there's a not nice situation again in the marriage, and then he runs again into the gym. It's also a kind of escape.
It's an escapism, yes. I mean, everything can be escapism if we were to look at it deeply enough, or long enough. However, I gave the alcohol one because it's the easiest thing to do. But gym is a great idea and a great example, and way more healthier as well. I wish
it is also an escape, and it's kind of, you close your eyes for your real problems.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it helps with gym, and I'm glad you brought that up. With gym, you are moving your body, so it's escapism in one way, right? But also, by moving your body, you're going to reset a lot of these mental functions that are in your body, let's say, and you might stimulate your vagus nerve. What's going to happen is you're going to calm down and you'll be able to consciously think about the problem. So it is, maybe at the beginning, I would agree with that it can be a part of escapism. However, I feel it's way more valuable and way better than going drinking, right?
Of course. Also, there are studies that doing sports helps with your depression. And
with mental health. Yes, definitely. But also, there's a level to it, right?
Yes.
If you go and all of a sudden become a competitive bodybuilder, that in its own creates a set of stressors that could bring more bad than good to your life.
And it also depends on how you train in the gym.
Yes.
If you only numb your feelings you have at home, or from the society, the stress you have, and you don't work with it, then maybe it takes a bit longer to realize what all your real problems are.
Of course.
But also, that's an interesting thing. It's an interesting topic. When you train right and work through the sport helps you with your mental health.
Yeah, I would highly agree.
And you can overcome these problems, feel better, feel stronger to help yourself.
Yes, I mean, in so many ways, for men especially, going to the gym, again, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it opens a lot of bigger topics. And I think all men should go to the gym. All men should work out in some way, be active, because it makes them more confident, one. Secondly, it helps with mental health issues. Like you mentioned, there are studies that prove that, lifting weights and going and doing cardio really helps with early stages of depression and even recognizing some of it, because you feel those endorphins and dopamine and everything coming in from a good source, right?
Also, it creates testosterone, right?
Of course, yes. And it's such a big stark contrast to having dopamine, for example, from scrolling social media, right?
Yes.
And I believe that's one of another pandemics that's on the rise for young men, is the social media addiction, scrolling through and seeing all that's happening there that's probably 60% fake or very, very curated.
And also very extreme. So you
Very
have
extreme,
these extreme bubbles. When you are caught in when we're talking about mental health, maybe you watch for a second longer a video about mental health or feminism talking about how man should be. And then the algorithm remembers this, and now you're catched in this bubble, but it's not a good thing. So you're kind of caught in this.
It can be a very myopic vision, right?
Yes.
That the algorithm will show you. And it goes, I think, in every way. Like, if I was to show you my Instagram feed, and what's it called? Explorer. It's surfboards, tattoos, and working out, and mental health.
Yeah.
These 4 things. But it used to be different. When I was younger, I'd look at Instagram and some ladies in bikinis. Then all of a sudden, you have ladies in bikinis everywhere, right?
Everybody can check now the Instagram Explore page. Mine would be yoga poses, calisthenic guys, because I'm into calisthenic and sports, and cats.
And cats. Okay, I didn't expect the cats to come into the question.
I love cats, but maybe it would be a good thing to reflect in an honest way to yourself. What am I consuming right now?
Yeah.
Is it a good thing? Is it a good, healthy?
And how long?
What and how long? That's also a good point. Is it a good thing? Am I in a bubble? Should I break out of this bubble maybe? So, but then we are back to the responsibility. You should take action.
Yes.
You have to take action.
Of course, it's a tool, right?
Yeah.
And let's not be used by the tool. Let's use the tool for our advantage, right? Use it for connection, use it for gaining. Right now, I mean, there's a career, right?
Yeah.
People have careers on Instagram and social media. And I've used social media before in a way that was not right. In a way that I was scrolling mindlessly. And now I've switched many years ago now to using it as research. Also limit my time on it there as well. With our phones right now, we can limit everything, every app, and it can switch off, and then next day it resets, right? Yeah. And it's great. However, it's our action again. We have to take action to be able to limit those things and realize that they're, first of all, in my opinion, waste of time where you're scrolling if you don't have a specific goal, right? But coming back to what I started to say about social media, and I think it needs to be addressed in this conversation, is porn usage by young men.
Yeah, it's also an escape.
Oh yeah, of course, it's escapism, but also it's the cheapest, the quickest dopamine hit that any person can get right now, unless you're using drugs. And just a day or two ago, I've seen the statistics from 2022 from Pornhub. America and UK lead the way in terms of hours of usage, the time and everything. It's 11 p.m. Surprisingly, hentai and Japanese porn is the most researched. However, it is staggering. The numbers of users around the world rise substantially every year, and especially through pandemic. It became so prevalent. And unfortunately, obviously, porn is skewed the way that men look at the female and the objectification of the female and male,
of course,
the interaction, the sex. They
get kind of numb
everything
in the normal sex, so they don't may feel what they normally should feel in a normal relationship, in a normal sex act. That's really interesting because they are caught in this dopamine circle. They're attached to it.
But also it creates unhealthy expectations, right? On both sides.
True.
And that what I want to speak about and most about this is creating those unrealistic expectations like Instagram and all of that. Porn has done it for relationships, sexual relationships between men and women. And it created this extra layer of expectation and pressure on men as well. I need to perform now in bed as well, on top of everything. I need to be like this hungry guy and do all these tricks and everything and make a woman orgasm in 5 minutes, which is mostly impossible in a lot of cases. So it's this extra layer of pressure and then another thing to deal with, right, as a man. And sometimes men lose themselves in porn. I have to say I was quite close to being addicted. I've watched porn a lot in my younger years, and with my mentor at the time, I realized, I came up to him and said, I'm feeling this is my stress relief. It became a bar from like me meditating and everything. Yeah. That was my stress relief.
So you combined these two feelings. So you're stressed. Okay, how can I release the stress? Okay, I watched the porn.
It was watching porn and masturbating, yes. And when I released it, I was like, okay, now it's done. But then 2 hours later, I was stressed again. So it's a vicious loop, right? And obviously by working with him and realizing the process and the whole mechanics of it, I was able to overcome it in a way that my biggest motivator is always losing money. So what I said, I pledged to him, and I said, if I relapse to watching porn and masturbation, I would have to donate money. And that was a big motivator for me to stop. And since then, I relapsed a couple of times, but then it really eradicated that. And also, it's completely changed the way I looked at sex. It completely changed the way I was interested in women, and it in a much more natural and normal way.
That's a good thing. Yeah. I have two questions. The first question, when you as man, you have a buddy and you maybe see that he has kind of this addiction, or he's talking about with you about his porns he watches, or his addiction to sport or whatever. What can you do as man, as friend, for your buddy to open the eyes for them? But sometimes you need a little push to open your eyes and realize, okay, maybe I have a mental health issue. So how can you help your friend as man? Exactly.
That's a great question. I'm really glad you asked this question because it's so important. So I would say the first step as a man to help other men when they come up with and share this in the men's circle or in normal life is to acknowledge that a lot of times we men would be struggling with very similar things. There's major things that we struggle, and it's not like we're all unique. We a lot of times feel like that because we bottle it up and we never share it. So we're like, oh, I'm struggling. I'm the only one in the world with these issues. And the reality is we're not. So first, I would say, yeah, man, I mean, I struggle with this, or I struggle still with this. And then just by that act of acknowledgement that it's okay, already puts a lot of stress away.
So you tell your friend that you have the same.
Yeah, or I had the same, yeah. And just say how it is, right? I struggle with this, man, this is okay. I've experienced these issues before. And obviously we men, we are solution driven, right? We want to help out by trying to fix it, right? And with men, it works, it quite works because all men are like that. So a lot of times, obviously, if the other man is in the capacity to hear and listen to the solution, I would just say, listen, I came through this. This was something that I experienced in my life. And if you want, I can share my experience and tell you how I overcome this. And it took such a long time. That's what I did. And we love steps. So it's like step one was just an acknowledging, accepting that it happened, not being a victim mentality or blaming someone else. It happened. I move on. Let's accept it and move on, and what we can do from it.
I think the first thing is to open up.
Of course.
To understand that it's okay to open up and show this part of weakness.
Yeah.
That's normal.
It's okay and normal. And that's like number one rule of Fight Club, which I call the men's circles, is a safe space, right? There's no judgment.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to talk about this outside the circle as well. It's completely safe. And that already creates a level of trust that men will be like, yeah, I'm struggling with this, or I had these type of behaviors and I don't know what to do with it. Because a lot of times we're lost, right? There's not always an answer to everything on Google, right? And the internet.
Especially in this topic. And I'm glad that you bring the men's circle up, because you are hosting men's circles. And you are the first person I know who's doing that. So, I mean, that's exactly what the problem is, that it's kind of like a anonymous alcoholic
could be
club-ish.
Yeah. We don't have 12 steps though.
So maybe can you explain what is a men's circle and how can it help other men?
Yes. So the first, it's a lot of times it seems that it's a big thing or something and I'm not taking away from it. However, what it is in the reality, it's a safe space for men to acknowledge and speak about their issues or their struggles. That's all it is. There's different types of men's circles. Some of them are more like performance driven and business driven. My ones always start in the way that I want to create a safe space. That's something that I needed when I was
This is
healing.
super important. Yeah, indeed.
So creating a safe space where you won't be judged by other men and just listened to. That's all it takes.
I think, isn't that most of all of us are afraid of judgment?
Yes, we are. I think innately we are, and especially men, surprisingly. We are afraid of judgment and rejection, right? And judgment is some form of rejection, because if someone judges you, that means they reject your behavior on some level or all levels. And we all, I think, innately as humans are afraid of being rejected.
And in your men's circles, you work without judgment. It's like open space where men can open up or just listen and open up later.
Yes, of course.
Experience
there's no mandatory things that you have to do in the men's circle. Sometimes I would have men come up, and it's because it's so new to them. They will sit around for an hour and a half, let's say, listen, and just be. Breathe with us, do some exercises, but don't share. And that's okay. And I always say this at the beginning. You come and you see for yourself. You can listen to other men, and already by you being there as a man in presence of other men sharing, it's already healing for you. Because you already know, like,
I agree.
There is a courage in sharing, of course, but there's no shame in not sharing. Just being there is already a lot. Right?
Yeah.
So I always say that for anybody who's like, oh, I'm interested, but I don't know what it is. I'm kind of a little bit scared. I don't know do I have to do something? Do I have to present myself? No, you don't. What you have to do, you don't have to do anything. Just show up and see what it gives you. And sometimes I would have men come up for 3 weeks in a row and just sit there and listen. And that's already a part of healing.
I think that's a wonderful work you do there.
Thank you.
And it's an important work for men.
I get this asked a lot, especially by women. When I get asked, like, oh, what do you do? What you're doing right now? What's your passion? And I say, my passion is to encouraging more men to engage in these activities that help them with their mental health and being able to see what they need to work on.
Yeah.
And there's many things like a shadow work, deep healing, trauma release, all of these things, right? But what it comes to is just men being men around men. That's all, in a safe environment. And a lot of times women ask me, why do you choose to only work with men? And I say, always, because I feel women lead a very different life in terms of emotions. You're more attuned to emotions opposed to us.
It's like from the kindergarten on.
Exactly.
We are meeting with our friends and we're talking about emotions.
And you're able to move through emotions so much easier as well. I worked with men, with women, with my method as well. And I can see the stark difference between women being able to go into those emotions quite quicker and then release them, right? For us men, it's much more difficult. And what I see in the world, and I've seen it in Ireland and Portugal where I lived before, I've seen women's circles just popping like fresh buns, everywhere.
I mean, you have these women retreats.
Exactly.
And
women are amazing in facilitating the safe environment for each other to move through these emotions. Unfortunately, men, we are not as good. That's why I want to focus on men, because I feel there is a big difference between access for men in terms of men's circles or methods that allow us to go through all of this that we struggle with.
In my opinion, in a world right now where everything has to be equal, it is 100% okay that you are doing a men's circle only for men.
Of course.
And it doesn't have to be for women as well.
Well, I feel no
or
need
you
to
don't have to be to work for women as well. It is okay and it is important.
Yes.
It is super important because, in my opinion, there are things in our nature, in our biological system, they are different. And if you do a men's circle for mental health for men, that's good. That's your passion, and you do a good job and a good work.
To add to that, I would say also I like interacting with women where it comes to this topic as well, and I love that we have this conversation, because a lot of times your audience, if it's female audience, would see that conversation and say, oh, I have a man in my life, he might be interested in that. So that's why I love to engage in this conversation as well, because it gives me an in through women to their men.
Can someone contact you?
Of course, yeah. Social media.
Okay, so
Instagram.
I will put all your details in the show notes.
Of course.
That they can contact
Appreciate
you.
that.
And as you said, open up.
I mean, there's so many ways we can do it, right? But just starting the conversation. I think the biggest thing that any man can do to better their mental health is, first of all, realize that he's not alone. And secondly, just to speak to anyone. It doesn't have to be another man. It could be, a female friend as well, right? It's just about opening up and saying, oh, I'm struggling with this. And then if he wishes to, then he can engage specifically with men. So opening up, speaking up about whatever is bothering you, because I believe it's not like we're all unique. However, we have very generic issues and struggles, and it can be helped, everything.
I have a last question. I mean, on my list here, there are way more questions, but maybe we have to meet another time.
We can do number 2.
And yes, my last question. I'm a yoga instructor, and in my opinion, yoga could help also a lot of men who struggle with mental health issues. Would you agree that yoga is also a way in to work with your mental health issues?
Wholeheartedly, yes. My journey with yoga, if you have a few minutes,
yes, of course,
is quite long already now. It's been at least 8-9 years, even before my accident. I've been using yoga as like a part of my strength and conditioning. But then it became more, and it became this practice of breath. It became this practice of connecting with my body and
Would you
listening.
say it created more awareness for yourself,
Of course,
physically and
yes,
mentally?
of course, yeah. Obviously, there was this competitive part.
Yeah, we all
it's
have
like,
that.
can I do 45-minute class without breathing through my mouth and all of these things? And of course,
That's okay.
However, I stumbled upon this YouTube channel, and there was a guy who had an amazing way of teaching, and I just really liked the way he was teaching. And there was specific yoga for men. I was experiencing a lot of problems and issues with my hips, and he addressed that. And I was like, that's amazing. So I started doing his day-to-day yoga challenge. It was 30 days. And that's how it started. And it's been 8 years now, or close to 8 years.
Cool.
And I wholeheartedly recommend doing some sort of stretching and yoga practice. There's so many ways of practicing yoga as well, right?
A lot of ways.
So many types.
And
But
also, if you go to the yoga class and your first motivation is to get into the handstand or do the physical things, the rest, it comes by itself.
yes.
That's the magic of yoga.
Yeah, I would suggest for any man to try many different types of yoga first. See which one you like, because you have like hatha, bikram, you have yin, you have vinyasa flow, and all of these things, and just find one that you like.
What's the most you like?
I like vinyasa. I love the flow. I think my life has been always in a lot of different things, flow. Like when I ride a bike or a motorbike, I like the flow of it. I love the ocean. I love the surfing. And in yoga, I love connecting all these poses and just like one fluid movement. That's one of the reasons I dislike Ashtanga.
Because it's only
very
the
repetitive.
vinyasa
And
ish, only the
yes.
chaturangas.
Yes. Yeah, everything is like puch, 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 puch. Again, a very German yoga type.
I like both. I like vinyasa as the same reasons as you said. I like the powerful movement and the connecting with the breath, especially with the Ujjayi breathing. But I also like the Ashtanga because I still have this ego part inside of me who likes the physical part. Or maybe it's the masculine part inside of me.
Maybe.
But I like it. That's the part I really like it, the strength inside of me.
Every practice of yoga is beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, great. Atlas, I think it's a good time to cut here our conversation. We could talk for hours, I am sure.
I feel we could talk for hours. Yeah.
And I would love to have a second part.
Yeah, great. That'll be my pleasure.
And thank you to all listeners. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions for Atlas, you can contact him. All contact informations are in the show notes. And with that, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Namaste.
I appreciate you.
Yeah,
thank you for your time. It was great.
It was really good.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. I think we can do another one.
And it was like 1 hour. Boom.
I didn't realize it was so quick.
Yeah, 2 times 28 minutes. And now I forgot to set the timer. So I'm like, okay.
Hopefully we have it.
I try to make it 1 hour-ish.
Yeah.
So that's a good amount of time.
And we got through some questions.
Yes,
as well,
I mean, 50%.
Great.
But next time we can talk about the traditional masculinity and the modern masculinity and some stereotypes, mental health issues with that, of course. And what is wrong with the masculinity, feminism say.
Yeah.
Good.
Great.
I will leave that in the podcast.
Yeah.
It's like
or maybe we can ask, if you want, in show notes, you can ask if there's any like follow-up questions that we can address in the second one.
Yeah, if you have any following questions, we would love to bring this up in the next part.
Yeah.
Great.
Bring it a little bit more, like a little deeper conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Super.
It was amazing.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening.
Cut.
Great.
Woo! That was wonderful. It was amazing.
Ich freue mich, dass du bis hier zugehört hast und hoffe, dir hat diese Episode gefallen. Ich würde mich freuen, wenn du einen Review auf Apple Podcast geben könntest und auch gerne diese Episode auf Social Media mit der Verlinkung @niyama.show teilst. Du hast dich in den Themen wiedererkannt oder kennst jemanden, den ich interviewen sollte? Dann schreib mir eine Nachricht an nicole@niyama.show und vielleicht bist auch du bald Gast in der Niyama Show. Bis bald, deine Nicole.